Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Mitch's Thursday night show. I see we've got a lot of regulars in the chat. If anyone's here that hasn't joined before, do just say hello in the chat because I'd love to know who's here. Today, as you see, I've got a little schedule of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going through progress on the Stanley No.3, showing you some of the footage that I've taken for doing the recorded videos. Same with the scrub plane, and it'll bring you all up to date with what's been going on so far. Today I started making the wedge for the scrub plane, so I'll show you that. And what the actual activity I'm going to be getting up to tonight is marking out for attaching the sole to the scrub plane. Last time I started cutting the sliding dovetails. I'll be marking out for those on the sole. So relatively short one tonight, but I hope you enjoy it anyway. So let's get started. I'll take you through what's happening with the Stanley No.3. So I think I told you that I would be scraping off rather than sanding the sole, and that's what I'm doing there. And that's my old part of a planer iron, big old thing, super cobalt, whatever that means, cobalt steel, 2810. And you can actually scrape as you saw there, you can scrape the cast iron, so you can actually level it with that as well. Although I did some, I think I showed it in this video, did some on a lapping plate because it is a lot faster. There we go, so a lubricated large lapping plate, about 150 grit diamond lapping plate. And yes, my thumbs just weren't liking the hand buffing, so I did a bit with the cordless drill. Now to fit the frog, I think I told you I was going to be doing this. Well, I use permanent marker on the little pads that contact the frog to the sole or to the body, and do a bit of movement around and see which points are high and which aren't. And you can see the shiny spots there are bits that are slightly high. Now I don't go as overboard as I used to in the past. I used to try and get the whole thing perfectly flat. Here I'm just looking for a lot of contact area, perhaps 80% contact area, and I do that with some diamond lapping paste. Pop that on the contact areas and just rub the frog around, and that's a tedious thing to do as well. If there's anything that was wildly out, then I could take perhaps a file to it, but it wasn't too bad. So I've ended up with what I think is quite a good contact there. Oh, this is the iron. I just sharpened the iron up. I gave a bit of a polish on, a bit of a flatten, but I've only really concentrated on the leading edge because that's all you really need on the back. And I just given it a slightly cambered finish on there. Taking the rust off the cap iron and seated it so it is nice and tight against the iron. Although I did notice that it's not brilliantly tight, and I don't think many Stanley ones are that tight. They contact, but there's not an awful lot of pressure going on. Little buff out with some auto sole, just so the shavings fly off it easily.
Interesting, I actually strop mine.
You strop it? Yeah.
I take them down onto the strop.
I regularly strop them when I take my plane apart to sharpen. I'll strop whatever's going. and it's good. But the Autosol was quite a fast acting one. You can get a lot of pressure on just with a thumb if your thumb's working. Move on to the scrub plate. I glued up the sections that I showed you last time. In fact, I'm slightly out of sync here. I should be at this stage here. I'll cut up the internal parts first of all. So I've got the toe and the heel, or the bed. Those two parts. That was prior to the last one. And I cut the sole for a larger block. Using a curving plane just to give me something to start with. Nice line to follow around. And then rock it. That's good then. And it's a little bit wider than I wanted, so I ripped the piece off the side. And then that got it to where it was Monday when I was doing the joinery. I did run a plane over it. It was nice and dimensioned, nice and accurately. I suppose that was particularly necessary, but I did. And after Monday, I continued to clear out those dovetail slots. And then I glued the main body of the plane together. I set up this little jigs, right angles, because I always find when I'm gluing things together, particularly with PVA, as soon as you try and put a clamp on them, they slide around a lot. So I've got a right angle there. It's a melamine board on the back there, so it won't stick to it, or at least not very hard. Yeah, could have done that, but I've just done it like this today. And one of the things I was going to do and I forgot, I was going to put the bridge in at this stage so that the pin for it didn't come through the side of the body, but I forgot, so I'm going to have a pin right the way through now. Big fat core on the top and a bit of clamping pressure. Now I didn't put much glue on. You might have noticed I was quite thin with that. I got full coverage, but not an awful lot, because I didn't want to have to clean too much out of the throat. It was probably 501, decanted into a small bottle. That was the wedge, cutting the wedge a little bit. So, don't know whether you saw that, but hopefully you did. If I can start it up again, I'm not sure. Yeah, so cutting the wedge. That's cutting the actual wedge part of it, and then cutting the nice little shape at the top, or reasonable shape, and then after that I did some filing. So I'll show you that in a second, but let's go over to see the number 3. You can see I've now got it together. It's the Ryobi number 3. Obviously now with its livery. I haven't done anything to the handles yet. I wanted to get it together to see if it would work properly, so we'll go and test that out in a moment. But
you should get some peacock oil for the handles.
I think they need a bit more than that.
You think?
They've got a lot of finish, which I guess is shellac, falling off them.
That will come off with mats.
We've got cracks in them. Oh, after they've been cleaned up, yes, I think peacock oil will probably work. You mean the peacock oil that I harvest off my my body? Right. Before anyone says anything about that, let's go over and try it out. Right, this is a piece of yew that I used for the the wedge that I'll show you in a moment. It's not the easiest of woods to play, and I'm feeling confident because I did try this earlier on. So there we go. Nice little shavings, nice smooth finish. I'll just finish that off because there's a bit that was sawn that's a bit lower than the rest. You can probably hear how lovely it sounds.
Scott's asking, is that you?
It's me. No, yes, it's you.
What?
Yeah, yes, it's you. There we go.
No, it's not me.
So that has not taken a lot of preparation on that iron. But what I have done, by actually flattening the sole, I've been able to get a nice thin cut, so avoiding any tear out on there. And it is a sharp iron, but I haven't gone overboard with it. Anyway, it's a lovely wood. Whilst I'm here, I'll show you the wedge that I've started making. So it looks a bit plain on that side. Looks a little more on that side, but a bit more character. But the top looks nice, I think. Now I've done nothing with the actual slope on the wedge there because I want to fit that so it's got total contact across its width with the bridge. So I'll finish that off later on. And that goes into the body, like so. So when it's fitted, it'll probably be so far down.
Mitch, I'm not sure if you were there during the bench talk when we were talking about the correct angle for the bridge. Are you using a squared off bridge or are you using a round bridge?
Very good that you've mentioned that. I'm planning on making my bridge from this bit of brass and a steel pin, so it will be a flying bridge. So
Okay.
it'll
The
rotate.
wedge angle should be around 80 degrees apparently.
Well,
Optimum wedge angle.
I can measure this, but I think I'm roughly there.
Yeah.
I mean, I eyed it going on other wedges I've got in wooden planes. But yeah, I think I'm about there. So that's something else I'm going to work out, exactly where that bridge is going to go. And I might check online for some references for that to see how far down it should be. Rather
I
than...
have a book which you may have a copy of, but I will send you a link to that.
Super, thanks Trenek. Yeah, I don't want to stick one in now and then suddenly ruin it because I put it in the wrong place. So that would be handy. So the next thing I was going to do on this was mark out for the adjoining or the matching dovetails to join the sole on. And it's something I want to put off really because I've never done this before and I don't want to get it wrong. I've got to do pretty much the same as I've got in here on the plane in such a way that the plane moving forwards and diagonally will join up with this and tighten in the tapered dovetails. And these are at, well, they're not at 8 degrees, they're at, not 8 degrees, not 1 in 8, they're 1 in 8 marked on the ends, but the way they've been cut at an angle will be slightly different. And I've got to make sure it's exactly the same or very close on the sole, which is a challenge.
I'd actually consider leaving it loose rather than gluing it in place, so that when the sole wears out, you can make another one and replace replace it.
Interesting thought.
Especially if it's wedged.
Well, it will be wedged. Yeah, I could possibly do that. Interesting, let me think about that. I can always start using it like that and see what happens. It'll always be glued later if it doesn't work out. Anyway, marking that out. I need to make sure it's going in the right direction, so the toes that way. The toe of this is that. So I've got the narrow end of the slots at the end of the toe, so that when you're pushing the plane forwards, it's going to tighten up all the time. And then I've got to mark out, I want this to finish up about halfway across when it's finished, and then I'll trim it up. So let's lift that up with something. A bit too thick. Okay, so that's offset it a little bit. And if I mark through, is that right? That side. So if I mark through where the groove intercepts the side of the sole, that's a bit of a tongue twister. So I mark those points, they will be the upper portions of the slots. Let me just square those up a bit. So I've looked at where the grooves intersect this corner at the bottom end of the plane, marked those on the edge, squared them up, and now I need to make a mark that's the same depth as these grooves up from the bottom of the plane. And Blue Peter style, I've already got my marking gauge, or cutting gauge actually, set for that, so I can put a line in right along there. And then
What's the reason for using cutting gauge? Is that just something you had ready, or was there a reason for using cutting over a pin gauge for this?
I just prefer it. It seems to track and not follow the grain as easily as a pin would, going with the grain.
Okay.
Now then, I'm assuming the edge angle should be the same. I think I was quite good with my sawing, kept reasonably to the right angle. Not the right angle, obviously, the 1 in 8 angle. So now I need to create, from the intersection of that scribed line and those lines I just squared up, put some slopes in, and let me grab some glasses. And what I will do with these, I'll cut them slightly smaller, so at least I won't be too large, and I can always extend them. And coming back the other way, to the other side of the groove. Now let's put that sole on where it's supposed to be. Let's double check it all looks right. Yeah, I think so. There's actually one right at this rear corner. Which I think will be rounded off when I finish the plane.
Chat's gone very quiet. Just remember, if you've got any questions, just shout them out and I'll read them out to Mitch.
They might have all gone home.
Good one, Mitch.
This is hardly riveting stuff.
No, you're definitely not riveting anything. This is woodwork, not metalwork. No, Paul asked, is it bust?
Rust
Is it bust?
is what bust me.
Yeah, I don't know. And Peter's saying, Trellick tells some dirty jokes. No, I'm not getting Mitch banned on this channel.
Paul, is it just that my sweatshirt is dangling a bit here? Right, well, I think that's probably right. I'll look around the other side, see if that lines up.
Paul says he's still stalking you, Mitch.
Oh, that's good to know. Right, well, interesting. I think that's probably done. So what I've done there is, let me show you. You might not be able to see it actually. I've marked in the, let's get some light on it. There we go, that's better. So I've marked in some angles here for the dovetail grooves. And I shall cut that. But I'm not going to cut it tonight because I want to double check it in the morning when I'm bright and breezy, just to double check that I haven't done anything stupid. And I've kept my...
Scott's asking.
Yeah, what's that?
Scott's asking if they're tapering dovetails, are they tapered on one side or both?
Both sides of what, Scott? Let me show you what I've cut here. So this is going to be the toe of the plane, and that end of each of these slots is slightly narrower than this end. So as the plane body is inserted sort of on the diagonal, it will get tighter and tighter, and I'll have the same on the plane body, so it'll be slightly narrower on this side and wider on this side. So they'll come together and should have a tight fit all the way along. At some point in its transition of that sole. And the idea is to try and make it so it's in the middle, because then we get a nice dovetail in the middle of the plane, but that may or may not happen, I'm not sure. But that's the idea, so it's tapering from one end of the slot to the other. Now what I was saying was I've kept the bevel gauges from when I made these slots, and they give me the slight taper, so there's slightly different settings on them. And this is what I need to double check in the morning, because I can't concentrate enough this evening to make sure I get this right. But one side of that tail that I've marked now will be scribed across to the other side of the plane using one gauge, and then the other side will be scribed with the other gauge, making sure that the taper's going in the right direction. And if I get that wrong now, the tapers will be wrong and it just won't go together. So,
Paul says that soul is epic.
well, thank you very much, Paul.
Peter asked me a question, so I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to the question that Peter just asked you. Peter, I'm working on a mitre plane at the moment. I'm doing metal work for the first time, but I'm not working on it at the moment because I'm working on my dissertation. He's asking you, how wide are you making the mouth?
I'm not worried about that. I'm making it wide enough to take big shavings because it's a scrub plane. I can show you what it is at the moment. It's looking like that. And the iron is going to be, I think it's probably about 4mm. So with the iron in, there's still, how best to show it? Like that maybe? Right? There you can see, so there's a big mouth. So it's going to let through decent sized shavings. But I can make it bigger. It will be.
You won't be able to get it to keep any secrets.
Pardon?
You won't be able to get it to keep any secrets.
No, absolutely, very good. You see what I mean about me not having enough concentration this time of night? It takes me a while to get your jokes.
No, they're just bad.
So is that bit it for questions? Do you mean to say I explained things well enough that I didn't get many questions? That's wonderful. Oh, Peter's saying it's the same size as European scrub with the horn handle. Well, I was thinking about the putting a handle on this. I was going to be doing that Roman one, if you remember. I didn't actually remember that when I started making it, and I cut it too small to do the Roman handle. But I have got enough meat on there just to put a little horn in the toe, so maybe I'll do something like that. But I need to work out where the bridge is going to go first of all, before I start removing any material. Now that's.
I've got a cast iron with a swinging bridge. Would you like the measurements from that?
Just repeat what you said.
I've got a cast iron infill plate with the swinging bridge. Would you like the measurements from that?
For position wise, that would be quite handy, thank you.
Sure, I can give you that.
This is quite a chunky bit of brass, so it's going to be hefty enough, and I'll probably put something like a, I don't know, 6mm steel pin, which should be strong enough, I would have thought. So that's the next, or one of the next things I've got to do is cut this off to width to fit in there, like so. And for those of you who don't know what a swinging bridge is, no reason why you should. If you think about this as the, where's the wedge gone? That'll be easiest. Think of the wedge going into the plane. Instead of going up against the pin, it goes up against, let's get some contrast going on. Goes up against the piece of brass, the flat piece of the brass bar, not bra. And that bar is then hinged on a pin So even if your wedge isn't quite the right slope, the bar can rotate on the pin so it matches the wedge nicely. So I need to cut a piece of this off that fits, and I need to drill for a pin to go through it. And that's something I'm not going to be doing unplugged. I'll definitely be using the bench drill for that. And I may even do some nice designs on the brass. Who knows?
I think you should find a Cupid bow into it.
Do you think? It's kind of used too much these days. I keep seeing things on Instagram or Facebook with people putting Cupid's bows on them.
That was the traditional. That was traditionally the only design that you'd really find on a plane. It was the Cupid's bow.
I wonder if that's because that's quite a nice one to be able to pin dovetails to. There's not too much extra area to pin the metal into.
I'm not sure that Cupid's bows in dovetails, so exposed Cupid bows in dovetails were a thing. As far as I thought, that was a Bill Carter thing.
Oh, okay.
I think Peter might be able to say more than me on that.
So you think it's just a design influence from other areas on the plane?
Yeah, so normally the bridge would have had a Cupid's bow on it.
Okay.
And the sides of the plane would have been shaped as a Cupid's bow. And maybe the wedge as well.
Ah. Interesting. See how little I know about old planes. So I'll probably come up with some design for it. Maybe following my name, you know, a nice peacock tail. Who knows? Or maybe I'll just polish it up.
Peter's asking, are you tapping a screw into the bridge to make it fit into the plane?
Am I tapping a screw into the bridge?
So, I think you said that you were going to use some steel pins from the sides when...
Yes, that's what I thought, yeah.
So I think Peter's just asking if you're using a screw instead.
I hadn't planned on doing that. I was going to have a single pin right the way through the bridge, and it would be a friction fit into the sides of the plane. That was my plan. Is there a precedent for using screws to fit those?
So on infills, they would use a screw and then they would file it off flush with the sides of the plane. So they would countersink the hole.
Right, yeah.
Very slightly. They would then tighten it up and then they would file it flush.
Okay.
And, well, actually, I think they would cut it slightly close, then pin it
Yeah.
so the screw doesn't move, and then file it flush.
And that's going into a metal bridge or a wooden bridge?
That's going into a metal bridge on a metal plane, so it would have been a screw. It would have been a
Machine screw.
It would have been machine screw.
Okay, I get you. Okay. Well, maybe I'll consider that then. It might look quite nice. Obviously, I can't pin it into my piece of wood, although it's very hard. I think that might damage the side of the plane. I'll consider that. I've certainly got enough machine screws around the place. The other thing I had was the pin I was originally going to use is drilled out for machine screws, so I could cut that to length, put that through the bridge and connect that with screws, which would allow the bridge to move without actually being on threads at all. So one way or another I'll figure out how the bridge is going in and maybe next time I'll have figured out what I'm going to use, how I'm going to do it. Well, I think I'm all dried up on things to tell you this evening. Oh, there was something. Is Tom Trees in today? I haven't seen him in the chat. He left a comment after 2 videos ago. No, I don't see him tonight. Left a comment about doing an experiment with cap irons. How cap irons can be used to make a better way of avoiding tear out and things like that. And he proposed a few ideas. He's very much of the opinion that everything you hear on, pretty much everything you hear on YouTube is wrong about having a closed up mouth and having a chip breaker really close and things like that. And said, can we do some experiments about it? So that's something I'm considering doing. So Peter's saying, will I be refining the plain body or some rounding over? Well, Peter, I was thinking that I would, this is the toe, of relieving here towards the toe, maybe putting a horn on there, or just something to make it a bit easier to grip. Certainly rounding the corners over, front and back, and the back top corner here, so it's nice and comfortable in the hand. And being a scrub plane, it's probably going to be holding it front and back like this and working it, so it wants to be nice and comfortable. Okay, well, I think that's probably it. ECE wooden planes are using a similar approach. I'll have to have a look at those. Paul's being a bit cheeky about big holes getting lost and horns. Very good, Paul. Right, so that's it. Hope you've enjoyed this few minutes we've spent together. I certainly have. I shall tackle the rest of that marking up on the plane tomorrow. When I'm perfectly happy that it's okay, then I shall attempt to saw it and chop it out. And you never know, I might just do a flash live stream up of me doing that. But I have no idea when it's going to be yet. Okay folks, thanks very much. See you again next time. Cheerio.